After surviving a terrifying game and becoming the grand prize winner, Ji-hun dedicates his life to getting revenge for those who weren't as lucky as him. While looking for the recruiter, the man realizes that there is a chip implanted behind his ear and uses a stylus to remove it so that the Round 6 organizers can no longer spy on him. A year later, Jun-ho wakes up from the coma he fell into after being attacked, and the first thing that comes to mind is the name of his greatest enemy, In-ho, his own brother. 2 years later, Jun-ho decides to become a traffic officer, having decided to quit his job as an investigator after his complaint about the games was ignored by his superiors, since he had no proof. Meanwhile, Ji-hun lives in hiding in his apartment and sends agents to search endlessly for the recruiter. However, even after all this time, no sign of him has been found. So Ji-hun decides to step up the search and doesn't mind spending all his money to prevent more people from being eliminated in that game. Excited by the reward of 1 billion wones that Ji-hun will pay to whoever finds the recruiter, Mr. Kim and his team intensify their search. Weeks later, Kim and Woo-sok find a man in a suit playing Ddakji on the subway, just as Ji-hun said he would be. Immediately, they both start following him and call Ji-hun to inform him of their location. After following the recruiter all over the city, the pair come to the conclusion that there won't be time to wait for Ji-hun to arrive, so when the man enters an empty alley, they decide to attack him. However, the duel doesn't go as expected and, even though it's a 2-on-1 fight, the recruiter manages to defeat them. After capturing these guys, the man takes them to an empty room and decides to play Russian roulette with them. The men will have to play Jokenpo and the recruiter will pull the trigger on the head of the loser of each round. However, during the game, the madman puts another 4 bullets in the barrel of the revolver, so that the chances of the next loser surviving are only 1 in 6. After the sad elimination of Mr. Kim, the recruiter decides to interrogate Woo-sok to find out who sent him. Since he couldn't find Woo-sok at the location he was given, Ji-hun returns home and realizes that the recruiter is there waiting for him. When he comes across the man he's been looking for the past 2 years, Ji-hun asks how to find his boss. However, instead of answering the question, the recruiter proposes a new game of Russian roulette with only 1 bullet in the barrel and both players alternate firing until there is only 1 player left. So, in the end, the recruiter becomes a victim of his own game and is eliminated with a shot of his own. Hearing the sound of the gunshot, Jun-ho, who was on the lookout outside, bursts into Ji-hun's apartment and orders him to raise his hands. The man has just taken a card from the recruiter's pocket and receives an arrest notice on suspicion of eliminating that guy. However, just as he is about to be handcuffed, Woo-sok appears and hits the policeman over the head with a fire extinguisher. After handcuffing Jun-ho in the bathtub, Ji-hun waits for the policeman to wake up to question him, and he tells him that he infiltrated Round 6 to look for his brother. Upon hearing this, Ji-hun reveals his true objective and guarantees that he will find the madman who is orchestrating this game to put an end to it once and for all. Then Jun-ho says he will help him on this mission and the two decide to partner up. That night, Ji-hun decides to show off his weapons stash and shows that he has set up a shooting range in his own home to train his skills. With the help of Jun-ho and Woo-sok, the ex-player puts together a tactical team to accompany him to the island. On the night of October 31st, Ji-hun goes to the meeting point where all the players from the next season of Round 6 will be taken and infiltrates a Halloween party. Seeing a man in red overalls, Ji-hun doesn't think twice about following him, and Woo-sok ends up being attacked by another masked man. After leaving the nightclub, Ji-hun gets into a white limousine and Jun-ho orders his men to follow the vehicle. During the journey, the player comes into contact with the man known as the leader through a loudspeaker and has the chance to give him a message. In this conversation, Ji-hun tries to convince him to end Round 6, but the organizer says that all the players participate of their own free will. According to the leader, those who are eliminated are nothing more than a pile of garbage and need to be removed from society. During the chase, the tires of Ji-hun's allies' cars burst and they are prevented from continuing after the limousine. When he learns that his friends have been attacked, Jun-ho decides to follow the limousine himself, but his vehicle is also hit by a bullet. At this point, Ji-hun realizes that he is on his own and asks for permission to enter the game once again. Knowing that his investors would like to see one of the winners take part in the competition again, the leader decides to fulfill Ji-hun's wish and says he will take him to the island. Now that his ally has been taken, Jun-ho says it's time to start Plan B and gathers his men to take a boat to the island. When he wakes up, Ji-hun realizes that he is in the same dormitory where he lived the worst days of his life 3 years ago, and, once again, he is player number 456. At the end of each round, the participants will be able to vote to decide whether they want to end the game or advance to the next stage. If the majority choose to end the match, the games will be cancelled and they will be able to share equally in the prize pool that has been accumulated so far. After announcing all the rules, the official gives people the opportunity to quit the game and go home. However, no participant wants to do this, so they are required to sign a consent form before moving on to the next stage. On his way to the first game, Ji-hun discovers that Young Bae, an old friend of his, has also been recruited to take part in the games and orders the man to stay close to him no matter what. When he arrives at the venue for the first game, Ji-hun decides to warn the other competitors about what will happen if they move at the wrong time, but no one believes him. However, Ji-hun insists that whoever moves will be hit by a lethal shot, but he ends up being ignored. Even so, the man risks his own life to give the commands to the other players and, thanks to him, everyone manages to advance. However, during a stoppage, one of the players notices a bee landing on her neck and despairs. After moving to try to get rid of the insect, the young woman is shot in the head and, at that moment, several other players despair. Even with Ji-hun's clear orders for no one to move, some people are overcome by the instinct to flee and try to escape, but end up being eliminated while trying to reach the gate. In an attempt to help as many people as possible cross that red line, Ji-hun directs the competitors to form lines to protect each other. In this way, the motion detectors attached to the doll's eyes will have a harder time detecting the movements of those behind. Thanks to this strategy, fewer and fewer people lose their lives each round and most competitors manage to cross the red line. After crossing the finish line, Ji-hun realizes that one of the participants is injured and decides to go back to help him complete that stage of the game. With the support of a young female player, he saves the wounded man, but his efforts are to no avail as the player is eliminated even after crossing the finish line. When the survivors arrive at the dormitory, an official in red overalls appears to inform them that, of the 456 players, 91 have been eliminated and congratulates the 365 participants who managed to complete the first game. After hearing this, some of the contestants start begging for their lives and say they want to get out of there. At this point, the man announces that the prize pool is 9.1 million won and, if the players decide to leave the game at that moment, they can split the money equally. After saying these words, the official starts a vote to decide whether the games will be closed, and the players are divided on what to do from then on. As voting takes place according to the players' numbers in descending order, player 1 is the last to vote and his decision will break the tie. To Ji-hun's misfortune, the man chooses to continue the game and no one present suspects that he is the round 6 organizer himself, who is infiltrating the competitors. In an attempt to get a head start on the next game, some contestants decide to approach Ji-hun to ask for some hints about what's to come. Then the man decides to give away a spoiler about the next game and reveals that they will have to remove geometric figures from a lump of sugar. According to Ji-hun, choosing the triangle is the best strategy to win that game, but when he opens the can, he comes across a pyramid-shaped design that is extremely difficult to remove. Luckily, this traumatic experience was just a dream, but when he wakes up he discovers that the real game is about to begin. Upon entering the arena, the participants discover that the challenge has changed and will no longer be a sugar hive. Suddenly, they hear a female voice asking the players to gather in groups of 5 and informs them that they will only have 10 minutes to make this decision. Once all the teams are formed, the moderator announces the name of the game, which is called 6 legs. The whole team will start with their legs tied together and then, every 10 meters, a member of the team will play a minigame. The aim is to win all the games and cross the finish line in no more than 5 minutes. After deciding which member of the team will play each of those games, the first groups start the challenge and the teams that don't manage to finish all the rounds in time end up being eliminated in a frightening way. While the bodies are being removed from the arena for the new teams to take their places, some officials realize that one of the competitors is still alive and mark his coffin so that his organs can be removed later. Noticing his co-worker's intention, No Aul decides to step in and orders his colleague to open the box. She then shoots the victim in the head and heart to ensure that the man is really eliminated and his organs are not sold. After analyzing all the mistakes that caused the previous team to be disqualified, Yeonju and his allies come up with strategies to speed up the matches. When it comes to the last game, one of the contestants despairs and her fear makes her think about giving up. Then, in an attempt to bring her back to reality, Yeonju strikes her colleague and encourages her to make one last attempt. Thanks to this action, the team manages to save itself at the last second and joyfully celebrates its victory. In the following rounds, the winning teams are already completely numb to the eliminations of the members of the other teams who didn't manage to complete the game and happily go back to their dormitories even though they know that several people left that arena in coffins. In the end, there are only 2 groups left to complete the challenge and Ji-hun's team is one of them. The first challenge is met perfectly by Junhee, and then the other two participants also manage to do their best in the games. However, when it's Young Il's turn to throw the spinning top, he does everything he can to delay the team, but at the last minute he manages to fulfill the challenge and Ji-hun closes the match with a flourish. At the end of the game, when the workers return to their rooms, No Aeul is attacked by two people who have come to threaten her. They claim that if she tries to disrupt the organ-selling business again, she will be severely punished. When all the survivors are gathered in the dormitory, the masked man appears to announce the result of the second game and reveals that there are now only 255 players left. After giving this information, the man starts a new vote and says that the decision to stop or continue in the game to increase the prize pool is up to the contestants themselves. This time, Young Il is the first to vote and fulfills the agreement he made with his team. However, even after all those eliminations, most of the players decide to go on to the next game, as they are all in debt. Seeing how desperate people are to increase the prize, Ji-hun tells his team to sleep under the beds, as he believes the contestants can organize night raids when the lights go out. In that game, the prize also increases if the players eliminate each other, so Ji-hun says that his allies need to take turns at night to keep watch. In the middle of the night, Junhee and two other women get a free pass to go to the bathroom and, noticing that the young woman is pregnant, Mrs. Zhang asks Junhee to let her know if she needs anything. A few minutes later, the old woman notices that Junhee is taking too long in the bathroom and decides to go into the cabin to check that she's okay. At this point, the girl begins to cry and tells her that she is terrified. She regrets having entered that game and says she would never have done it if she had known she was putting her baby's life in danger. Moved by the young woman's plight, Mrs. Zhang embraces her and promises that both she and her baby will make it off the island alive. The next morning, the players wake up to loud music and discover that the third game is about to begin. For the next challenge, the contestants will have to climb onto a rotating platform and form teams with the number of members that is announced. The first challenge consists of gathering groups of 10 people and, after doing so, the players must run into the safe zones. The people who are inside the booths after the time runs out are saved, but those who have not been chosen to be part of any group are eliminated with shots. In the next round, the contestants have to divide into groups of just 4 people and, as there aren't many booths available, a large number of people end up being eliminated from the game. Then the rule is to split into groups of 3 and, once again, everyone outside the booths is eliminated. The game continues until there are only 126 survivors left and the moderator announces the start of the final round, in which the participants will have to split into pairs. As there are only 50 cabins available, only 100 people will be saved, but when he enters the cabin with his ally, Young Il realizes that there is a person inside and decides to eliminate player 343 with his bare hands to ensure his survival. While the 100 survivors return to the dormitory, Junho and his team continue their search for the mysterious island where the round 6 participants were taken. That afternoon, after the last game, Ji-hun's main concern is to convince the players who, in the previous round, voted in favor of continuing the game, to end the dispute before the next stage. However, since any kind of interference has been strictly forbidden, all Ji-hun and his friends can do is count the votes and hope that people have the good sense to choose to leave before more eliminations take place. At the end of the vote, the score was tied and the masked man said that a new vote would take place the following day to give everyone time to think. During dinner, the two groups occupy opposite sides of the dormitory and begin to think of strategies to convince someone from the other team to join them. Tired of eating that bad food, Mrs. Zhang and her son guarantee that they will buy everyone a decent dinner the next day if they manage to turn the tables and get out of there. With the stress mounting, the contestants start arguing with each other and soon the atmosphere begins to heat up. Later, when he goes to the restroom, Min-soo is bullied by the members of his old group to vote for the blue circle, so that they can take part in another round. In an attempt to convince him to change his vote, Myung-ji says that he climbed to the top of a bridge and was about to end his life when the recruiter appeared and handed him a card. Since then, the young man believes that it was God who sent him to that game and he is willing to do whatever it takes to become the big winner. When he realizes that Myung-ji is pressuring Min-soo to change his vote, Dae-ho convinces all the other players who also pressed X to go after him. During the discussion, Myung-ji enlists the support of the players who have pressed the blue circle and begins to taunt his opponents. A few minutes into the argument, a fight breaks out in the men's room and Myung-ji attacks Dae-ho aggressively. Just as he was about to suffocate, the young man used a fork to strike his enemy in the throat and then stuck it in his neck. Terrified that he's taken someone's life, Dae-ho hides in one of the booths while the fighting continues in full swing outside. While the contestants eliminate each other inside the bathroom, the guards remain motionless outside, as they are not allowed to interfere in fights between contestants. At the end of the duel, when everyone is back in the dormitory, the moderator announces the numbers of the players who have been eliminated and the amount that has been added to the prize pool. That night, during a storm, Park, the captain of the boat that Jun-ho hired to help them find the island, is caught trying to destroy the drone that the policeman and his team are using to search. At this point, he tries to disguise himself and sneak out, but his excuses don't convince the team member, so the captain decides to attack him with a knife and pushes the man into the ocean. Soon after, Woo-sok appears and almost manages to catch him red-handed, so the captain says he heard a noise and just got up to see what it was, but found nothing wrong. In total, 5 people were eliminated in the fight that took place in the bathroom, and 3 of them belonged to the group of participants who voted to continue in the game. This means that the opposing team now has a numerical advantage when it comes to the votes. Knowing this, Ji-hun predicts that when the lights go out, the rival group will orchestrate an attack and, to prevent other members of his team from being eliminated, Young-il suggests that they attack first. However, Ji-hun suggests a new plan and says that in order to win that battle, they need to defeat the leader who is orchestrating that game. After convincing his allies to join him, Ji-hun says that they need to steal the guards' guns during the fight that will soon take place. When the lights go out, Ji-hun and his friends hide under the bunk beds and, while their enemies attack the opposing group, they hide quietly, waiting for the fight to end. To prevent all the players from losing their lives or being injured to the point of not being able to play the next game, a few minutes after the rebellion began, a group of armed soldiers entered the dormitory to bring order to the situation. After breaking up the fight, the guards need to identify the players who have been eliminated, at which point Ji-hun's team goes into action to steal the guns. Just then, a new battle breaks out and the soldiers in red overalls end up being eliminated by their own guns. With the help of his allies, Ji-hun manages to eliminate almost all the enemies, and the few guards who manage to survive have to flee. Now that they have the guns, the players destroy the security cameras and Ji-hun invites the members of the opposing group to join him in his mission to defeat the boss. After taking the captured soldier prisoner, Ji-hun orders the young man to take them to their leader and, as they climb the stairs, some guards start shooting. During the exchange of fire, the soldiers are eliminated and the team continues the mission. However, just as they are about to reach the control room, other guards appear and a new firefight breaks out, causing the soldier who was being held prisoner to be eliminated. While their allies try to eliminate the guards, Ji-hun and Yoon-bae sneak out and use the mask to open the door that leads to the center. After eliminating a few enemies along the way, the commander of the rebellion uses a radio to ask for support and Young-il goes to meet him. When he realizes that his ammunition is running out, Ji-hun decides to move in and hides behind the pile of soldiers' bodies while stealing the cartridges that are stored in their pockets. While his allies are caught in the crossfire, Dae-ho decides to go back to the dormitory to get more ammunition. After gathering all the ammo available, he prepares to return to the battlefield, but ends up cowering and leaving his allies in the lurch. Worried about her friend, Yeon-ju decides to go after him and discovers that the young man has been hiding all this time. After picking up the ammunition, Yeon-ju runs to find her companions, but sees a group of soldiers invading the dormitory and prepares to attack them. Knowing that the woman is at a great disadvantage, Mrs. Jang manages to convince her to surrender, as Yeon-ju would certainly be eliminated if she decided to confront them. Meanwhile, Young-il sets up an ambush to eliminate the guards surrounding Ji-hun, but instead of shooting the masked men, the traitor shoots his own allies. After pretending to lose his life to trick Ji-hun, Young-il puts on his leader costume and puts on a black mask so he won't be recognized. When his ammunition runs out, Ji-hun has no choice but to turn himself in and sees his friend, Yoon-bae, eliminated as punishment for turning against the boss of that game.